So now let's get into upgrades. So there's a couple of different options for how we do upgrades. The first one is known as a disruptive upgrade. It requires stopping all I/O to and from the cluster. So we take a maintenance outage and do this. The next one is a non-disruptive upgrade, an NDU. This is probably the one you'll do most often. Each controller is updated and rebooted individually so as not to stop I/O. And the idea is that, we're active controllers. We upgrade controller number 1 while it's offline. Controller 2 handles all I/O. When controller comes up, 1 comes up with the new software version. We then flip over and we start to upgrade the second controller, and controller 1 handles the I/O. This is the most common. And then we do a software update. Now, this is as of code release 2.3. In the future, when we can do online expansions of adding bricks, you won't need to do this. But right now, if you wanted to go from 2 bricks to 4 bricks, the only way to do this is to back up your data, basically flatten the cluster, start clean, reinstall the OS just like we did in the beginning of the lessons in the labs, and then restore your data back to it. And that's what we refer to as a software update. A little confusing because really most people think of software update as an NDU. I'm upgrading my software from 2.2 to 2.3, and that's non-disruptive. Well, when they talk about this, it is a full-on rebuild of the cluster. So, software prep before you do a disruptive. Download the latest XIO software from the EMC support site. SCP that software to the var lib XMS images directory on the XMS, kind of like we did when we did an initial build. SSH and log in as XMS admin and then tech, and then run the show SW images and confirm that the XMS sees the new software. Again, we did all this when we originally built the cluster. Then you want to disable what's known as ESRS monitoring. ESRS is a monitoring system by EMC. It's kind of a central monitoring host that'll monitor your EMC devices and do call home and open tickets and things like that to EMC. You're probably using that. If you are, you want to turn that off while you do this upgrade. Because again, it's disruptive. They're going to see it as an outage and you're going to get a call from EMC tech support. So modify SYR notifier set to disabled. Then confirm that there are no issues that may impact the upgrade. So you want to do a test cluster upgradability, package equals in the name, and it'll tell you if there's any issues. So like the example down at the bottom, I'm saying I want to upgrade a 223 build 25. It's going to tell me that this thing's already running 223.25. It'll also tell you if there's other issues with initiators, single connected hosts, things like that. Then you want to perform the upgrade. So you do a stop cluster unorderly, and then you issue the upgrade command, upgrade cluster unorderly, and the name of the package. And this will then go ahead and upgrade both controllers, but it will cause a disruption in service. Then to wait for it to finish, you want to wait for the XMS to come back up because it will update the XMS software as well. And you want to wait for that to reboot, log in again as XMS admin and then tech, and then restart the cluster using the start cluster command. And again, re-enable ESRS by resetting the modify SYR notifier to enable. Now let's talk about an NDU, probably the one that you're going to do most often, and the one we're going to do in the lab in a minute. So it's very much like a disruptive process. You copy the OS and the software and all that stuff over. The difference is you don't manually start and stop the cluster. There's no stop cluster unorderly. There's no start cluster. You will get kicked out of XMS and you will need to log in again as it's coming up and as it upgrades the XMS. Now, I did this in the lab a minute ago. I did this in the lab that we're going to go over in a minute. I ended that lab a little bit early, and I actually tried to go back and re-record the lab. The only problem is it would not let me upgrade a brick from the same to the same version of code. So it wouldn't let me go from 223.25 to 223.25. It also would not let me roll it back to an earlier build of 223. What I cut short on the lab is you will see a lot of alerts and errors as the process completes. So when the lab finishes in a minute, that's actually not the end of the process. It's the end of the XMS being updated, and it's the end of the code being put on the controllers, but there are still some things going on, and there were a ton of errors that showed up in the XMS. Now, don't be alarmed. because what happens is those errors pop up as things reboot, restart, services get updated, but then they go away. So if you watch it, it's kind of scary, but understand it is an upgrade process. The XtremIO 223 documentation says that upgrade process should have lasted about 15 minutes. Mine took 45 minutes. Now, it was probably 15 minutes before I got control back of the XMS and everything was, working from a management viewpoint, but it was 45 before all the alerts came and went. So again, let it go and let it finish. But I just want to let you know that there was some things beyond the recording that you'll see that I could not go back and recapture. As I said, documentation says it was 15 minutes, a good bit longer, and you're going to see a lot of errors within the XMS. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in the lab. We are going to perform a non-disruptive upgrade. And as you see, we'll go through this process, we'll copy over the new code, we'll issue the commands. I will cut the video short as there is some reboot things that take a while. So with that, let's go ahead and jump on over.